So we're going to talk about multiplying binomials. Before beginning your notes today, go ahead and set them up with Polynomials, Unit 4B, Homework 4, in the upper right-hand corner of your page with the appropriate date. And then set up questions or comments on the right-hand side of your paper. So Tricom Computers is a company that sets up local area networks and offices. In setting up a network, consultants need to consider not only where to place computers, but also where to place peripheral equipment, such as printers. So here's an example of a setup they'd like to try. And on the corners, A, B, C, and D, that's going to represent the printers for that area of computers. So in this area, we have 5 rows by 5 columns. They're going to report to printer A. And in this area, we have 2 rows by 5 columns that will represent or report to area C, or printer C. Here we have 5 rows by 2 columns that will report to printer B. And then finally, this small area will have 2 rows by 2 columns that will report to printer D. All in all, we have 25 computers plus 10 computers, and 4 computers, for a total of 49 computers that will report to 4 different printers. Now there's a faster way to get that number. We have 7 and 7. 7 times 7 gives me 49 computers as well. So let's talk about how we can use this setup to help me when multiplying binomials. Take a moment, pause, copy, before continuing on. So here, the office to the right has 8 squared computers. We're going to fill in the number of computers in each section as if it's split up into a 5 plus 3 squared configuration. Keep in mind, 5 plus 3 represents 8. So 8 times 8 is 8 squared, and we're going to divvy up these boxes to represent that. So here, I'm going to have 5 columns and 3 columns for a total of 8 columns. And then in this one, I'm going to have 5 rows and then 3 rows for a total of 8 rows. Now, 5 times 5 is going to give me 25 computers in this section. 5 times 3 will give me 15 computers in this section. 5 times 3, 15 in this section. And then 3 times 3 will give me 9 in this section. Now, I should have a total of 8 times 8, which is 64. Let's see if this breaking it down gives me a total of 64. I'm going to take the 25 computers in the first section, add it to the 15 in this section, 15 in the third section, and 9 in this section. Now this gives me a grand total of 64 computers. Let's see if this works with another example. So I'm going to use this graphic organizer, and what this is going to help me with is to help arrange the multiplications using the distributive property. So here I have 5 times 7. And so I'm going to have 5 times 7, and I want to go ahead and break that up into small pieces, 2 different pieces. So my 5, I'm going to break up into 3 plus 2. And so I'm going to have 5 columns, 3 in this section, 2 in this section. Now 7, I'll go ahead and break it up into 4 and 3. And so I'll have 4 rows here, 3 rows here for a total of 7. Now, could I have used different numbers? Could I have used 4 and 1 and 6 and 1? Yes, that's totally okay. It doesn't matter how you break it up. It just matters that the numbers match up. So 4 times 3 is 12. 3 times 3 is 9. 4 times 2 is 8. And 3 times 2 is 6. Now altogether, these should add up to 35 because 7 times 5 is 35. So I'll take my 12, add it to my 9, then add 8, add 6, and that should total 35. So how does this apply to helping me multiply polynomials? Go ahead and take a moment, pause, copy this before continuing on with our next exercise. So I'm going to use those same graphic organizers on the previous page to help me multiply binomials that are going to contain variables and not just numbers. So here I have x minus 2 times x minus 3. And I'm going to use this graphic organizer to help me multiply these two binomials. Now the reason I'm calling them binomials is this is a binomial because it has two terms, binomial, two terms. So let's start with x minus 2. I'm going to have x here and negative 2 here. And then for x minus 3, I'll have x here and negative 3 here. When I have the subtract, make sure that the subtract sign goes with what's before it to make it a negative. So let's go ahead and start. X times x is going to give me x squared. Now I can do x times negative 2, and that's going to give me a negative 2x. And then I want to go ahead and do negative 3 times x, and that gives me a negative 3x. And then, of course, negative 3 times negative 2 is a positive 6. Now, once I've got all of these filled in, keep in mind, all you're doing is you're adding all of these terms together. So I'll have x squared plus negative 2x plus negative 3x plus 6. Now, once I've got all my terms in order, what I want to do is go ahead and look if I can combine like terms. And I have two x terms here that I can go ahead and combine. Negative 2x plus negative 3x. And that's going to give me a negative 5x. And then finally, make sure you simplify all the way down. You want to have the plus and the negative signs simplified to just subtract. And so x minus 2 times x minus 3 will give you x squared minus 5x plus 6. And this is how graphic organizers can help you when you're multiplying binomials. Let's look at another way that we can multiply binomials. Before continuing on, though, make sure you pause and copy. Now, there's a second way that you can multiply binomials, and that's using the FOIL method. So I'm going to look at the same two binomials again, and I'm going to use the FOIL method to multiply them. So the F represents first. And that just means I take my first two terms and multiply them. That gives me x squared. The O is going to be represented by outer. And this is where I take my terms on the outside and multiply them. And that's going to give me a negative 3x. Keep in mind you're adding all your terms, whether positive or negative. Next, I'm going to do I, which is inner. And this is where I'm going to take my inner two terms and multiply them together. And that gives me a negative 2x. And then finally, the L will give me the last two terms. The negative 2 times the negative 3. Which gives me a plus 6. Now, once you've got FOIL done, once again, look for like terms and combine your like terms. And then make sure you can simplify any of the operations that you can. And in a nutshell, that's FOIL. First, outer, inner, last. Take a moment, pause, copy before continuing on. So here's where I'd like you to try out these strategies. For 1 through 4, I'd like you to multiply using the strategy of your choice, whether you use the graphic organizer or you use FOIL. Make sure you write your answers in standard form. Take a moment, pause, do the try it out before you take a peek at the answers. And here are the answers. Once again, put a star by anything you struggled with or you didn't get the right answer on so I can go it over when I see you next. See you next class.